the most value I've got is the people. I think connecting with like-minded individuals who are motivated to do the same things across the continent has been really useful and helpful and encouraging. I think meeting those sort of people who understand the journey you're going through and support you, especially as difficult as it is, and help you navigate so you avoid pitfalls. That's been super helpful for me.
So the CFF network, I think, plays a really great role in bringing the right people together. I think while the Africa startup ecosystem is still quite nascent and arguably quite small, there's still quite a lot of disconnectivity. And I think as we figure things out, it's really important to be able to find common platforms to connect with peers, share best practices, even share challenges, and maybe vent a little bit if we need to. But I think the role that CFF plays as this type of objective intermediary, if you will, but who understands the network, understands the players, understands the environment, and how do they help us better connect the dots to collectively progress forward.
This network is a Africa-based emerging class across geographies network that really builds an ecosystem. You can do peer benchmarking, you can take hands, you can co-invest. There's even a few partnerships that were born from here. Also, if you look for talent, this is the pool to put on your investment committee, on your boards. So I think there's much more cross-pollination that's happening here, beyond learning, of course, exchange of tools and more.
The value has been huge. We joined the collaborative from the get-go. I think it was late 2019, right before COVID. And we were a first-time fund manager and a pioneer in the field because we're 100% gender fund operating in Francophone West Africa where the industry is nascent. And without the support of the collaborative, I don't know how we could have made it. We benefited from the network, from peer learning, from accessing free resources, and exchanging tips and validating our model with our peers, and that has proved invaluable.
So the value I've gotten from this network is really one, definitely building connections with fellow local capital providers that are either at our level, either building their first fund or really build their first or second fund, and just being able to learn from the experiences of those who've gone before us, or those ones who basically trying to address the same challenge that we're addressing. That's number one. So networks. Number two really is around just the know-how and very practical know-how in terms of just really what works, what doesn't work, that we've been able to really take that with us and use to really change or basically address what we're trying to work on. So really for me it's really been about networks and know-how. That has really been useful for us as a local capital provider.
I'm a new member. I joined this year. This is my first convening. And in the last 2 days, I've learned so many things. It's been great to see people who are a couple of years ahead of me on the journey and see what they've had to go through. It's nice to see people who are at the same place I am and to sort of confess about the things I've been struggling with and hear that they're struggling with the same things. And it's good to form professional relationships. They're going to be people that I co-invest with and get other value from.
I've been part of this network for the past 3+ years, and I love the value I believe is in the people in the network. I've found folks to collaborate with on deals, on experience sharing, to meet in different cities as I've gone around, and just generally on helping to build the ecosystem. And I think that's really key to maturing this ecosystem.
I've seen quite an amount of progress in this asset class in the last few years. I spent the last 5 years working in an early stage venture capital fund and just founded Sayuni Capital 3 months ago, so fairly recently. And one thing I've noticed is that there is a lot more openness in the market to investors as well as early stage companies to really recognize early stage capital providers as an emerging and important asset class. And second thing is that there are a lot more fund managers in this asset class than there were, just a few years ago. So it really is encouraging to see a critical mass forming around this.
So we've been in the process for about 5 years, and the biggest progress we've seen are the facilities that have been created for particularly female fund managers. You might be aware that there's only 5% of female fund managers in Africa, and these facilities have been great from the perspective of giving us the opportunities to coordinate our events, to coordinate what we are trying to do as emerging female fund managers. So we've been seeing a lot of programs which are focused at capacity building us, which I think is something that is substantial into spearheading how quickly we can make the progress that we're trying to make.
There have been a lot of new first-time fund managers who have, like I mentioned, who've come up with innovative ways of launching their funds and breaking into the space. It's exciting to see that there are a lot of locally based fund managers that have actually gone into the space.
I think the last couple of years have been difficult, to say the least, particularly with everything going around globally. When we talk asset class, VC and PE, I think interest rates have changed the perspective of a lot of people. It's no longer a growth at any cost. It's foundational and fundamentals, so that you're evaluating companies. So on the buy side for us, when we're looking at companies, they have to be delivering value, and the fundamentals will need to be strong. We're not just looking for growth stories anymore. It's got to make sense, and I think that's the return to discipline, right? And that's not new. It's what's always been there, and I think long term, particularly from our perspective, is that Africa is still a focus and still has a future, given that interest rates have always been high, and so I think it puts us back as being an option. Even though it's a little bit misunderstood.
The most important thing is that we show that we are a reliable, sustainable asset class that produces results. And the results would be return on investment, but also the impact measures that many funds are really not good at measuring, and founders. So I think for us to make it as an asset class, we need to put a lot of effort in return on investment and return on impact. Those are the fundamental things. And then obviously we want support. It is an emerging fund manager class. We do need first class facilities. We need facilities that can support technical assistance. We are micro funds. The economies of scale is not there yet. So supporting getting the asset class to stand on its own, I think, is very important.
I think we need to attract the big players, the big LPs, especially the FDIs, the big family businesses, because we need to build the ecosystem. In most parts in Africa, the economy relies on SMEs, and big capital will need to, things need to percolate from big capital to smaller funds in order to be accessible to those SMEs and really make the change.
A few things need to be done to accelerate the progress in the coming years of this asset class, and particularly in two ways. One is investors really being able to take more risk to support this emerging asset class. And then second, just greater collaboration across different markets within this asset class. I think really a combination of those two things would really help to de-risk and to catalyze capital to early stage capital providers?
I would say in general, there needs to be a bit more open-mindedness by the capital owners of the capitals or capital providers in terms of really working with local capital providers. I think there's a need for a bit more faith that, these are people who are based locally, they have a track record, working with companies in the region, they understand the sectors, they understand the local nuances. And I think for me, that's a first step that's really important. So you're starting from a place of working with people who really understand the terrain. Two is really a bit more support in terms of really trying to address the major bottlenecks that local capital providers are facing. First one is really the ability to be able to demonstrate track record. So a lot of mechanisms around that in the warehousing facilities. Two is addressing challenges around, technology, access to shared services to try and minimize the cost of doing business, addressing challenges around talent, to ensure that we have more and more, talent that's able to play in this space. And then, lastly, definitely, I think we need increased capital flows into the markets, especially to local capital providers. I think in my view, those are some of the aspects. There are probably others that are critical for us to really accelerate the asset class.
In the coming years.
So this network is amazing for collaborating and sharing ideas and brainstorming ideas and coming up with innovative ways of making the load and the work easier. Definitely, strategizing, speaking, and discussions are not enough. So what definitely needs to happen is implementation. It's very important that in the coming year and the coming years, whatever has been discussed here is actually implemented. That's the best way forward.
At one level, what needs to happen is more money needs to go to low-income countries and early-stage capital providers in countries that are currently underserved. In order for that to happen, larger institutions who control a huge portion of the capital need to be able to satisfy themselves with these managers. In my opinion, they're a little bit too risk averse at this point. They take too long in the diligence process. They wind up investing in the big mega funds that they've continually invested in the past. And as a result, the people who are closer to the ground and are investing in the earlier companies don't get a chance to get capitalized. So that's one thing that the larger institutions could do. Separately from that, we can do more work to help sort of financially motivated local investors or other high net worth individuals get into this kind of asset class.